Two things come to mind. Number one, whee! And number two, duh! Wow.
You have to get up, do what they do. But that was insane. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Come on! I make go records, baby. I'm liking this.
Hello and welcome to another Hawks recap video. My name is Clay. Thank you for tuning in. Blackhawks just finished their 42nd game of the season. The first game of 2020, the first game of the new decade. And unlike the last decade when the Blackhawks won, Blackhawks start this decade off with a loss. They lose 5-7 in Vancouver to the Canucks. Now, because it was in Vancouver, that means it was a late night start. So I'm going to be doing a one-take episode here. No jump cuts or anything. Just hammering right through this thing. Now, as I mentioned, Hawks start this decade off with a loss. Unlike last decade, I feel like, just scientifically, this decade might be a little rougher off than last decade. But I think we kind of expected that maybe a little bit. But I'll tell you one thing. Patrick Kane, he's starting off this decade like it was last decade. The kid is unreal. Seriously. He tried to will this one for the Hawks. But unfortunately, Hawks, when you score 5 goals, you probably should expect to win. But when you give up 7, you probably should expect to lose. And, 7 overrides 5. And it is what it is. Hawks, though, started off in this one pretty well. First period was a good one for them. I thought they came out with good legs and good play, simple play, smart play, getting the pucks in deep, creating some chances, forechecking well. The Canucks were really kind of turning the puck over quite a bit in that first period, and I don't know if it was necessarily just because of the Hawks forecheck or the Canucks were just playing sloppy. I'm going to guess it was probably a combination of those two things, but the Hawks created a couple chances from that, and honestly, I feel like the Hawks probably should have been leading after that first period, but Canucks capitalized on one of their opportunities. They scored 5 minutes in, basically a power play goal there, even though it was about 2 seconds after the power play expired. So basically a power play goal for the Canucks gets them on the board first, but 14 minutes into the first period, the Blackhawks would respond and tie the game up thanks to Connor Murphy with just kind of jumping and pouncing onto a loose puck and just ripping it by Markstrom. Also, I thought Markstrom played pretty darn well in that first period. He was a brick wall at times. Probably one of the reasons why the Blackhawks were not leading after that first period. But unfortunately, after that first period, Blackhawks kind of went downhill. Now, the second period actually turned out to be pretty decent for them, but it also was pretty decent for the Canucks. It was a crazy second period for sure. 6 goals in that second period. Hawks would score 3 straight goals, one by Kampf to tie it up. Then Patrick Kane would get one, then Jonathan Toews. But unfortunately, the Canucks would score 3 as well. So this game goes into the third period tied at 4, and I think the third period is where things started to fall apart for the Hawks, in part because the Hawks were playing their 4th straight game in a different time zone. Now, that's not an excuse. I'm not trying to make an excuse, but I do think that's one of the reasons maybe they fell off a little bit in that third period, but definitely credit the Canucks for coming out hard and scoring when they needed to. But it's tough on the body. I know the Blackhawks, I know the hockey players are, professional athletes and they get paid a lot of money, but it doesn't really matter how much you get paid. Sometimes, your body and mind just, they have limits, right? 4th game straight in a different time zone is kind of rough. Even if you have a day off in between, it's a lot of travel and it's just adjustment. So tough for the Hawks, but they gave it a good effort. This was a very back and forth game, and the third period was pretty decently back and forth as well. Bo Horvat would open up the scoring 8 minutes in, which would give the Canucks a lead. But then Patrick Kane, like I said, just starting off the decade with just just like he's never left the last decade. The guy is unreal. Now, I made a prediction in the Hawks subreddit's Discord channel like a couple weeks ago, trying to guess when Patrick Kane would get to 1,000 points in his career. He's up over 990 now, and at the time I picked January 9th against the Nashville Predators, or whenever that Nashville Predators game is. I think it's January 9th, but if it's not, please don't roast me. And I thought that was a pretty aggressive guess. It was kind of going towards his, goal average or point average per game, and I kind of went over it a little bit, because he's on fire a little bit right now. But still, I thought it was aggressive, but he looks like he's going to hit it before then. It's kind of nuts. The guy just doesn't slow down. Trying to will the Blackhawks to a win here, but unfortunately it wouldn't happen. A big defensive blunder in the third period. A couple of those by the Hawks in this one led to a Gaudette goal that got the Canucks in the lead. It was the game-winning goal in this one, and then the Canucks would get an empty netter later, but it's tough. Hawks made a couple bad defensive mistakes. Also, Canucks basically scored on both their power plays. Hawks only had they had a power play goal, but they had 4 power plays. They actually probably could have had more. A couple missed calls, I thought, but I'm not gonna complain about that. That's not the reason the Hawks lost this game. I'm not torts at all here. You can win despite not having calls go your way. But Hawks had their chances. Markstrom made some saves. Hawks couldn't capitalize throughout the game. They did score 5, but unfortunately tonight 5 was not enough. Now, before the game, I did make a little bit of a wager, although technically I guess it wasn't a wager. I said if the Hawks won tonight, I would be donating $20 to the Cancer Research Institute. Unfortunately, that happened, but I also made an exception. I said if the Canucks won, then I would make that $20 donation to to a charity of Canuck Clay's choice. Canuck Clay is another YouTuber, Canucks guy, great guy, absolutely great guy. You can find him on Twitter and YouTube as Canuck Clay, and links will be in the description below. But he decided to choose the Canucks for Kids charity, so I'll be making a donation to that because the Canucks won this game. That'll be $20 going there, and then I believe he said he would be matching that as well. So good on him. Great guy and great name as well. Can't go wrong with that. Give him a follow on both platforms. I know he's a Canucks fan. I know, but hey, nobody's perfect in this world. All right, you can forgive him for that. But anyhow, unfortunately, the Hawks end their winning streak at 3. But it was a good game. It was a back and forth game. Hawks need to shore up some things defensively. It was the type of game that I thought really both teams, I want to say deserve, but nobody deserves a point because you either get a point or 2 points or you don't. That's my philosophy. But if there was any game where it would have been fair for both teams to get a point, I thought this one was it. But Hawks kind of came out with the raw end of that deal here. Unfortunately, they didn't get the point. It would have been nice to do it, especially against Canucks team who was ahead of them in the standings, although they're in the Pacific. It would have been nice to get a point against them. Instead, they gained 2 points on us if they're ever dropping out of the division, top 3 division spots and into the wild card. That could play a factor. But Hawks can rebound from this. Like I said earlier, I hope Crawford gets a start in the next game. And hey, we have a chance. We're still playing pretty decently. And we have a chance here to restart this win streak. One loss isn't bad. It's when you lose, consecutively. That's when things go downhill for you. So hopefully the Hawks can kind of build from this, say, hey, we were right there. We didn't play our best, but we had our chances. There was kind of some puck luck that went both teams' ways. We were right in it. Just didn't happen. Let's go out and get the next one. Let's try and put it together another win streak and continue climbing up these standings. So there you have it. That's my one take Hawks recap video. Apologies if it wasn't up to your standards, but I felt like with the late night start, I needed to get this one over with in terms of like not being able to, or not having to edit or do a whole lot of post editing work. So yeah, now I can finally get some good rest for tomorrow. So anyhow, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Like, share, and subscribe. Appreciate that as always. But most importantly, stay safe, make good decisions, and I'll see you next time.